Okay, chapter 34 in progress. The very beginning. Leah, you want to begin for us?
Sure. You just want me to say my name?
Yeah.
Now Dinah, the daughter whom Leah had borne to Jacob, went out to visit the daughters of the land. Shechem, son of Hamor, the Hivite,
Sure, why
chief
not?
of the country, saw her and took her and lay with her by force. Naughty.
Where I come from.
Being strongly drawn to Dinah, daughter of Jacob, and in love with the maiden, he spoke to the maiden tenderly. So Shechem said to his father Hamor, "Get me this girl as a wife."
Yeah, so we're diving, I'll pause there for a second. We're diving into pretty tricky waters just as we start this. Dinah, remember, is the only daughter, right? So all these sons are born to Leah and to Rachel and to the handmaidens. But Dinah's the girl in the family. She's the only daughter. She's out there sort of, again, it's sort of like a wild, wild west still, obviously, it's ancient times. And we have this moment, which has been interpreted, and I think correctly interpreted as rape, the rape of Dinah. There have been other midrashim and other ideas that sort of played with this narrative, but I think that the most clear telling of the story is plain sense, as what it is. Again, it's pretty clear, pretty explicit what happens. But then this next sentence sort of like, it's sort of bizarre. It's sort of, after this happens, this guy, Shechem, sort of speaks tenderly, sort of like, we don't know what that means. But the end of it is now he wants to marry her, right? Now, what is, of course, absent from this? What the heck Dinah wants, right? Like we have no understanding here of Dinah's perspective of this entire thing, right? We don't
have anything she can say.
Say again?
Does she have anything that she can say?
Yeah, we don't know, right? I don't know what she could say, what's going on here for her. But we don't have any sense, right? Now, certainly later on in biblical law, as we get to some of these, again, as I said, sort of tricky, complicated, maybe putting that too nicely, passages of the Bible that sort of talk about, women who are sexually assaulted, and then like the man has like the right to marry them, kind of, it's like that's sort of like part of the, and then if they don't, then he's in trouble, and et cetera, et cetera. But of course, what the woman's desires, wants, needs are not so much part of the conversation, and so we don't really have a sense here of this, which is why we have midrashim and some other sort of stories about what this relationship between Dinah and Shechem might have been, was it, and so if they have some different playing around with the story, were they star-crossed lovers, but the plain sense of the text does not indicate that. That's just, further playing with the story. I'm trying to remember if it was the Red Tent. I think it might have been in Nia Diamant's book, and if not hers, I can't remember. But someone else sort of plays with this narrative, looks at it in a different way. But as I said, plain sense of the text is what it is, right? She's assaulted, and then Shechem's like, you know what, I really like her. Let's marry her. And the text continues from there. Okay. Leah, you want to give me one more? Jacob heard
that he had defiled his daughter Dinah, but since his sons were in the field with his cattle, Jacob kept silent until they came home. Then Shechem's father Hamor came out to Jacob to speak to him. Meanwhile, Jacob's sons, having heard the news, came in from the field. The men were distressed and very angry because he had committed an outrage in Israel by lying with Jacob's daughter, a thing not to be done.
Okay, yes. And so here in this paragraph, again, it's a little wonky, right? Like Jacob hears what happens, but he doesn't really do anything yet. Maybe he can't do anything yet, and then the sons came home, and the sons obviously are outraged, at what happens. Again, the verbs are a little different here, that in lying with Jacob's daughter, it doesn't say it by force or everything else here, but this idea of lying with the daughter, not to be done, can't have it, right? So you have Hamor, the father coming in, maybe trying to lay some groundwork for his son here, trying to somehow make this a little bit better. But as spoiler alert, it doesn't go well, for these people after this terrible thing happened. So Melissa, you want to pick up here? And Hamor spoke.
And Hamor spoke with them, saying, "My son Shechem longs for your daughter. Please give her to him in marriage. Intermarry with us, give your daughters to us, and take our daughters for yourselves. You will dwell among us, and the land will be open before you. Settle, move about, and acquire holdings in it." Then Shechem said to her father and brothers, "Do me this favor, and I will pay whatever you tell me. Ask of me a bride price ever so high, as well as gifts, and I will pay what you tell me. Only give me the maiden for a wife."
Okay, thank you, Melissa, for that one. So Hamor, again, is trying to, create some kind of arrangement here. Shechem, loves her, Shechem wants to be with her. So let's have her marry, Dinah marry Shechem, and then, hey, let's all just marry each other, right? Let's have, let's combine our tribes, basically, is what I'm trying to say here. Let's combine forces, let's unite. Let's all sort of bind our families together. And then look, you'll have a home here, right? You can move about, acquire holdings. Let's sort of unite. And Shechem, so he's here, and he's
on your keyboard, Barbara.
Hi, everybody. So Shechem is like, hey, whatever you want, whatever you ask of us, we'll do. Just give me her as a wife. So again, murky, right? So he clearly has, I think clearly, though obviously one can make a counterpoint, but at least plain sense of the text, is that he has feelings for Dinah now, and he wants to be with her. And wants to be married. Again, nothing from Dinah. That's not part of this narrative.
I heard it.
So we only really have
There you go. I heard it.
He said part of the story.
I can hear, but I can't hear him. Can you hear him?
Yep.
Guys, we can hear you. So you might want to hit that good old mute button. For us.
Not as loud as it can go.
Mute.
You could go into tools.
Okay, listen.
Okay, I got him. I got him.
Tools?
Okay.
Yeah, down at the bottom.
Okay.
The very bottom, the wheel.
Okay, that's one.
There, he got it.
Okay.
Oh, all right. I thought it just told me to do something.
You gotta mute yourself because they can hear us.
Okay, there we go. Now we got there. Okay. Thank you. So now let's continue our journey here through the text. Melissa, you want to give me one more? Jacob's sons.
Jacob's sons answered Shechem and his father Hamor, speaking with guile, because he had defiled their sister Dinah, and said to them, "We cannot do this thing, to give our sister to a man who is uncircumcised, for that is a disgrace among us. Only on this condition will we agree with you, that you will become like us, and that every male among you is circumcised. Then we will give our daughters to you, and take your daughters to ourselves, and we will dwell among you and become as one kindred. But if you will not listen to us and become circumcised, we will take our daughter and go."
Okay, so Jacob's sons have a little deal, have a little arrangement. You know what? This happened, okay, but in order for us to enter into an agreement with you, enter into a covenant with you, to enter into kind of a relationship with you, you got to do one small thing. A little sacrifice, so to speak. It's time to take a little off the top. We have to have that circumcision moment. And that way we can be with you, because it doesn't work. We need to have the circ. So, and if we have the circ, then we'll be okay. Then we can move forward. And because can't have it, covenanted people, it's part of who we are, is circumcision. So, that's what you got to do. And of course, we see in the first sentence, it says speaking with guile. Okay, so we know that treachery is afoot. Sort of a little bit of payback is in store here. Tyler, you want to read here?
Sure. Their words pleased Hamor and Hamor's son Shechem, and the youth lost no time in doing the thing, for he wanted Jacob's daughter. Now he was the most respected in his father's house. So Hamor and his son Shechem went to the gate of their town and spoke to their fellow townsmen, saying, "These people are our friends. Let them settle in the land and move about in it, for the land is large enough for them. We will take their daughters to ourselves as wives and give our daughters to them. But only on this condition will the men agree with us to dwell among us and be as one kindred, that all our males become circumcised as they are circumcised. Their cattle and their substance and all their beasts will be ours if we only agree to their terms, so that they will settle among us." All who went out of the gate of his town heeded Hamor and his son Shechem, and all the males, all those who went out of the gate of his town, were circumcised.
Thank you for that, Tyler. So, tell them the story to the folks here, to the townspeople. Say, hey, what sounds like a lot of fun? Maybe that wasn't the exact wording, but hey, if we do this, we get cool stuff. And again, not for nothing, in this part of at least Shechem maybe believes that he's in love, because it is quite an ask. Let's put it that way, and okay, sure, why not? He isn't taking this particular request. He's taking it in stride, I guess. And he's saying, okay, that sounds fine. Let's all do this together. It's like, if you go out with your friends and say, hey, let's all get a tattoo. This is sort of permanent too, and perhaps a little bit more invasive, or at least, uncomfortable. I wouldn't know from the tattoo. And as far as the other thing, I was 8 days old, so I wouldn't know. But that being said, again, one can't think it was a day at the beach. As someone who enjoys days on the beach, I could say that this is not a whole lot of fun for Hamor and Shechem and the rest of his crew. But they're out, they go to the gate, they all go to the gate, they get whatever they need to get, and they circumcise themselves. All in the name of love and unity, or something. Okay. Gary, you want to pick up there on the third day?
Okay. On the third day, when they were in pain,
No kidding.
Simeon and Levi, two of Jacob's brothers of Dinah, took each his sword, came upon the city unmolested, and slew all the males. They put Hamor and his son Shechem to the sword, took Dinah out of Shechem's house, and went away. The other sons of Jacob came upon the slain and plundered the town, because their sister had been defiled. They seized their flocks and herds and asses, all that was inside the town and outside, all their wealth, all their children, and all their wives. All that was in the houses they took as captives and booty.
Okay, so it was a plan, a plot, a ploy, a ruse, a charade. And so after they're all circumcised and healing from their wounds, Shimon and Levi decide, hey, it's clobbering time. It's time to come out, and they have their swords, and they go in there and they start killing everybody. Because they came into town, no one bothered to stop them. They think they're on their side, sort of like the Trojan horse here, and they're coming in and they're killing everybody. Hamor and Shechem, get it first. And then again, one has to note, right? they take Dinah out of Shechem's house, right? And so Dinah was still there, hanging around. Again, I'm not sure what her deal was, why she was there. Did she have to be there? Was there pressure on her to be there? I don't know. But certainly Jacob's brothers were not amused, and they grabbed her, took her out of there, and then went on a killing spree. And the other sons sort of came and slain and killed and plundered, and really just put them to the sword and took everything that they had and said, okay, what was yours is now ours, as recompense, as revenge and retribution for what happened to their sister. Okay, any thoughts up to this point on this frankly disturbing narrative?
All's fair in love and war.
Oy, 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 oy. I think that's definitely here, no, without a doubt.
What is it? So didn't the man sort of like give his word and the sons have blown it?
Yeah.
Yeah, they sort of made the deal, but perhaps
They
we're
didn't
not.
mean
It wasn't really in goodwill or good faith. I think this negotiation, and as we're going to see in a minute, Jacob's not really amused by what happens here. I think Jacob sort of feels they entered into some kind of agreement, and his sons did not live by their word here. But again, I think it was Jacob's deal and not the son's deal. Like the Dinah's brothers were not letting this stand. They were not letting this go unavenged in their mind. And so, we see Jacob has a perspective, but the sons have quite a different perspective. And so we can finish this off here. And Gary, you can go ahead.
Okay. Jacob said to Simeon and Levi, "You have brought trouble on me, making me odious among the inhabitants of the land, the Canaanites and the Perizzites. My men are few in number, so that if they unite against me and attack me, I and my house will be destroyed." But they answered, "Should our sister be treated like a whore?"
Yeah, exactly. So the brothers are not amused. And again, Jacob here is sort of like, hey, maybe we could have handled this differently, sort of more peacefully. And now you've done this. Now you've sort of put a stigma on me, because you made me look bad to everybody, and no one's going to want to sort of deal with me or enter into agreements with me. And on top of it, you made me some more enemies, that these guys are now potentially going to be able to attack me. So he's interested in sort of that long view. And the brother's like, no, sorry. No, we're not buying it. All that stuff is trivial compared to our sister's, defilement, our sister's status, our sister's well-being. That's the urgency of now. This is what's happening right in front of us, and we can't let that slide. We can't let that be how she's treated. So, what do we make of this narrative? Is Jacob right? Are the brothers right? How do we handle this?
You have to wonder if killing is the only answer. Could there have been some other kind of punishment?
Yeah.
And, what I don't understand is that it said that all the males were slaughtered. Is that right?
Yeah.
So who's going to come after them? Who's going to come after Jacob if all the males were slaughtered?
So we have other tribes that are there.
That's
so
what Jacob is saying,
Yeah, these are the Hivites, and so the Canaanites and the
Oh, I
Perizzites,
see.
some of the other ites. Yeah,
Mhm.
there a lot of clans are together, and so with like natural alliances. So
Mhm.
for example, if Russia invades Ukraine, we'll see natural alliances, see what happens. Yeah.
Yeah.
Would you think that Jacob possibly thought what he suggested as being the better course to follow? That there was a payment for what was done. It perhaps didn't do anything for Dinah, but it avoided something. You know,
Yeah.
a lot of people were massacred who had nothing to do with what happened.
Yeah, I think that's a
Yeah,
big
but-
part, is the sort of the question of Dina, sort of her status. And, you know, did Jacob view what happened as unfortunate, sort of, and as terrible, but he was willing to live with it, you know, to make some kind of financial agreement. You know, he might have been able to sort of like, again, he might not have loved it, but he would be able to work his way around it, where the brothers live in a different world, where the brothers are like, this is black and white, you know, if she was raped, we're killing everybody, you know, and that's it. Like that's the price, so to speak, where Jacob sort of wants a monetary, you know, sort of financial award, sort of, you know, a restitution for damages, you know, and the brothers like, no, this is a capital offense, everyone's getting it. And, you know, you know, and yeah, I mean, obviously it's only Shechem and Hamor, so to speak, or Shechem actually in particular, right, that is guilty of any transgression. But the brothers taking it on everybody, you know, all are guilty, you know, by association. And I think that's a question that Jacob might have as well. Was there perhaps a middle ground? Could we have dealt with Shechem perhaps? And maybe that's it. Whereas the brothers decided everyone's getting it. Everyone's getting the pointy end of the sword.
Mm-hmm.
And I
Well,
think
from
that's
a-
Jacob's problem.
From a 21st century perspective, neither one of these compromises are ideal, and considering the time frame, nobody was going to take Dina's perspective into it anyway. So, but they're
Yeah.
still not ideal. I mean, the father's willing to marry off all his sons to these people, even though the eldest of them has gone out and raped the daughter. That's not right. But killing everybody is also not right. I mean, the killing everybody was not a big surprise, because that's what you read through the first 5 books, and you know, we get mad, we go out on a killing spree. Everybody does it.
It's like an honor killing, you know, in a
Yeah.
way. You know, speaking of 20th, 21st century sort of, you know, things that we sometimes hear about. But yeah, I mean, I feel like Jacob was trying to make, you know, lemonade here, you know, out of lemons. And the brothers were like, nope, no lemons, no lemonade.
Yeah.
That's it. You know, we've got to wipe the board clean. You know, and so again, it's tough. And again, because as we mentioned a couple times already, you know, we don't really have a sense of Dina here, like, and her perspective. What did she want, you know, after this whole thing? What would she be able to live with? You know, was she there cheering on her brothers, you know, as they were slaughtering their way through this town? You know, maybe yes, maybe no, we don't know. And again, it's hard to parse from the story because Dina apparently again was there. They took Dina out of that household as they were killing people. You know, so it's unclear at best, sort of where Dina was in this whole thing. She
And
was
she doesn't
wrong.
show up again anywhere, does she?
Say again.
She doesn't show up anywhere again.
This
No,
is it.
that's what I'm saying. So you have no clue what happens to her. Yeah.
I would have to sort of give that one. I don't think she's mentioned much again. I think this is her story, as sad as that is. This is sort of her text here.
Yeah.
Then we sort of move on because that's it. Like this actually ends. You know, that ends that story, that question, right? And now we're onwards and upwards to, you know, other things. And so that's a very, like, that's a chapter. It's a chapter. It's almost like its own story, its own sort of episode. And now we're like back to our regularly scheduled programming. It's like we had the very episodes, you know. It's like, you know, a narrative into itself. And then we're moving on as if nothing happened until, frankly, towards the end. Genesis, where this incident is brought up. It's alluded to by Jacob, who is none too amused with his older sons, who he holds guilty for this thing. So like, Jacob is never okay with this. Jacob is never convinced that this was the way to go. He doesn't buy it. He's angry with them, you know, forever.
Am I muted or what?
No, I got you now.
Oh, I just see it differently. Well, I agree with everything that has been said, but I see brothers defending their little sister. And then I also see an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth.
Yeah, well, I mean, certainly,
She's the only little girl in the family.
rape's a capital crime, but nowhere do we get sort of in Leviticus and in Exodus, the idea, that the rapist, the family, and the town will get put to the sword. So I mean, eye for an eye is one thing. These are a lot of eyes and a lot of teeth. This is one person or two people. They slaughtered a village, or at least the clan, right? But yeah, I agree that it was baby sister, right? And all bets are off. Sibling dynamics what they are in the Bible, but you mess with the family,
That's what you get.
it's going to be a poor result, especially as you said, this is the only daughter in the family. One can guess that to take Dina out on a date, wasn't going to be the easiest thing to get through all these brothers,
That's for sure.
And again, one can guess in this narrative that Shimon and Levi weren't exactly,
But I don't understand, what's the point of the story? I don't get it.
In terms of the greater global perspective of the Bible.
Yeah, well, even in this part of Genesis, here's this little, one verse story. And then it just goes on like it never happened.
I think part of it, and it's going to be, if I had to reverse engineer in a way, like I think that it's going to explain why Shimon and Levi are not going to be given land, why they're not going to be tribes. So they need a reason to sort of punish these two. And so building it backwards, that could be a reason, if one wants to sort of say, this is I'm trying to think of a better word instead of origin story, but like this is an explanation. This is a reason why, they are not held in high regard today in the same way.
Okay, all right.
That'd be my only guess as to why that happens. Another possible reason is, though, again, given where they land, I think it's less likely, but the idea of showing that they are tough cookies, these two, that these are sort of like, and that they, woe be thy who messes with the house of Jacob. I think it could be that kind of story too. But again, given where it goes, I'm not sure that's what it is. But this idea of like the mighty house of Jacob, don't screw with us or you get the sword, kind of,
Right.
I think that could be part of it. Okay, Sharon, you want to unmute and give us a little bit?
Sure. God said to Jacob, arise, go up to Bethel and remain there, and build an altar there to the God who appeared to you when you were fleeing from your brother Esau. So Jacob said to his household and all who were with him, rid yourselves of the alien gods in your midst, purify yourselves and change your clothes. Come, let us go to Bethel, and I will build an altar there to the God who answered me when I was in distress and who has been with me wherever I have gone.
So again, as I said, like we're just jumping into the next thing. Like that sort of ended. And I will also note, as I am wont to do, I will note that God does not appear in that other story. God is nowhere in the rape of Dinah story. God doesn't tell the brothers, hey, you know what? Now it's butt kicking time. Like this terrible thing has happened. Go kill them all. God is absent from that story. And so almost to show that that was its own distinct passage, because the very next thing that happens in 35, the first thing is, hey, God's back. And God's talking to Jacob. You would think God might have had a word or two to say about what happened in the last chapter, but not so much. But now God's back in the game. Maybe God had to use the facilities, for a chapter. Now God is back, not indisposed anymore. And God's going to talk to Jacob and say, hey, you know what? Might be time to go. You just killed a bunch of people. Might be some subtext here. But again, it's not there. I would think so. Maybe it's time to, make other arrangements now that you went on a murder spree. And so let's go back, let's get out and get out of here. And so Jacob says, hey, let's get all these idols out. Because again, here's another problem, right? There might be idols where they were. And everyone's got to sort of get going, put on some new clothes. You have to take off your killing clothes and put on some regular clothes, and it's time to go. Build an altar and let's get out of here. Let's get out while the getting is good. Okay, Sharon, give me one more they gave.
Sure. They gave to Jacob all the alien gods that they had and the rings that were in their ears, and Jacob buried them under the terebinth that was near Shechem. As they set out, a terror from God fell on the cities round about, so that they did not pursue the sons of Jacob. Thus Jacob came to Luz, that is Bethel, in the land of Canaan, he and all the people who were with him. There he built an altar and named the site El Bethel, for it was there that God had revealed the divine presence to him when he was, it always happens to me when you move it. Hold on. When he was fleeing from his brother. Deborah, Rebekah's nurse, died and was buried under the oak below Bethel, so it was named Alon Bakuth.
Okay, and so again, we're sort of getting out of here, right? So we're going to get rid of the alien gods. We're going to get rid of the jewelry, that we don't need, that might be, not necessary to have anymore. And then God sort of comes around and says, again, don't mess with Jacob. Boo, scary, terror from God. Everyone's all scared and freaked out. They're not going to pursue Jacob. Then Jacob again is able to get out peacefully and quietly. And again, Jacob's not much for names. The place is called Bethel already, and now it's like El Bethel. Jacob needs to maybe have a thesaurus or something, try to have some different names, different ideas here. But El Bethel, God, house of God. So that's going to be the new place, another altar site. And then again, a sort of a throwaway. But, Rebecca's nurse, Rebecca lived a long time, and then obviously the nurse lived a long time too, probably nannying the kids and helping out a little bit. She passed on, and she wasn't really part of the story, but, we'll give her a little shout out here. And another little holy site, another place for pilgrimage, to mourn, right? Part of the family story that she's here under this oak tree. Alon Bakuth. Okay. God's going to talk a little more here. Yeah, so we did that already. Yep. Okay, Sandy, God appeared. Sandy, you want to unmute? There you go.
Then, okay. God appeared again. Is that where I'm starting?
Yep.
Okay. God appeared again to Jacob on his arrival from Paddan Aram, and God blessed him. God said to him, you whose name is Jacob, you shall be Jacob no more, but Israel shall be your name. Thus God named him Israel. And God said to him, I am El Shaddai. Be fertile and increase. A nation, yea, an assembly of nations shall descend from you. Kings shall issue from your loins. The land that I assigned to Abraham and Isaac, I assign to you. And to your offspring to come will I assign the land.
Thank you for that. Yeah, so again, seems a little interesting here because, we did this already. We did this a couple chapters ago, a little bit more, with the wrestling of the angel or the man or himself, whatever we want to call it. We had this already. Your name, who is Jacob, you're going to be called Israel. So we get it twice. We get it in the angel story, and we get it here again. Maybe it's a bit of a reminder, we can say, instead of a redundancy, instead of a reminder. Just remember who you are. We had this little rough moment, perhaps, but remember that you are Israel, and God sort of formally sort of puts his name on him. And then God, as if they hadn't met before, right? Like they have been acquainted. Like this isn't their first date, so like they do know who each other are. By the way, I am El Shaddai, in case we hadn't, exchanged names yet. Be fertile and increase, etc., etc. Stuff that we find with Abraham, with Isaac, so this covenantal promise, right? A nation, an assembly of nations shall descend, and of course the land, right? The land I assigned to Abraham and Isaac, I assigned to you and your offspring. The covenantal promise of the land of Israel, Eretz Israel, that Jacob and his descendants will in fact inherit. So it's a nice little moment, just try to maybe end where we began, I guess, with Jacob in a way, just trying to get back to sort of that different status that he inherited from his parents, so that we call back that reminder of the birthright and the blessing, that he gets from Isaac, his father. And now again, God is going to reaffirm this, reaffirm his name, reaffirm who he is, and reaffirm his destiny and his people's destiny. Make sense? Makes sense. Good, good, good. Okay, Sandy, give me one more. God parted from him.
God parted from him at the spot where God had spoken to him. And Jacob set up a pillar at the site where God had spoken to him, a pillar of stone, and he offered a libation on it and poured oil upon it. Jacob gave the site where God had spoken to him the name of Bethel. They set out from Bethel, and when they were still some distance short of Ephrath, Rachel was in childbirth and had hard labor. When her labor was at its hardest, the midwife said to her, "Have no fear, for it is another boy for you."
Easy for you to say, midwife. She's having a rough go. You can say something from the sidelines. I don't think it's very helpful. I can imagine Rachel gave her a smack or something during this whole endeavor. But so we have this beginning part here. God, said, "Okay, see you around, see you later." And then another pillar, another site, Bethel once again. We keep on naming things Bethel. It's going to be confusing. It's Main Street. With that being said, so Bethel. So they set out from Bethel, and spoiler. We didn't even know at this time. Rachel's apparently very pregnant, and she is giving birth on the road here near Ephrath, giving birth by the side of the road. And so we had absolutely no idea this was happening, right? Because it was not mentioned in any other portion, any other part of this, that she was in fact with child. We had very long and sometimes a little graphic, sort of like depictions in the earlier part of Genesis about Jacob and his love life. And now all of a sudden, oh, by the way, Rachel's pregnant. Not only pregnant, she's giving birth, to a son, apparently. This midwife is going to ruin the surprise for everybody. It is another boy. And Rachel's having a tough time, because again, no epidurals, in the road to Ephrath, that wasn't happening, But then again, the guys are getting circumcised without any anesthetic either, and so it's just no fun for anybody this week. Everyone's having a lot of troubles. So when her labor was at its hardest, don't worry about it. It's fine. Another boy is coming. Okay, and so she is in labor. And turns out maybe she should have been worried a little bit, because this is the end of the road for Rachel. Karen, you want to pick up here?
Okay, had to unmute. But as she breathed her last, for she was dying, she named him Ben-Oni, but his father called him Benjamin. Thus Rachel died. She was buried on the road to Ephrath, now Bethlehem. Over her grave, Jacob set up another pillar. It is the pillar at Rachel's grave to this day. Israel journeyed on, well, he was Jacob in that sense, now he's Israel again, journeyed on and pitched his tent beyond Migdal Eder. While Israel stayed in that land, Reuben went and lay with Bilhah, his father's concubine, and Israel found out.
Okay, so there's a lot here, as we say, right? There's a lot here to unpack. So Rachel, unfortunately, as was of course all too common back then, and frankly still far too common now, passes away in childbirth. And as she's dying, she calls him Ben Oni. Now, Ben Oni, the literal translation means the son of my suffering. And so that's the name. Now, Jacob is thinking to himself, you know what? It's not a great name. It's not a great name for a boy. You don't want to constantly be reminded growing up that you're the cause of your mother's death, right? Like that's not really a thing. That would be great for little Benny's self-esteem here. And so even though she named him Ben Oni, the father says, you know what? No, we're going to call him Benjamin. We're going to call him something different. Benjamin means son of my right hand, or else can be translated as son of the sea, because Yam, so Ben we know is son, and Yam is right, but the reason why it's right is that it's towards the sea. And so like from a navigation standpoint, you have Yama, to your right, Safona to the north, Kedma south, Negba south, Kedma east, right? And so the Negev is south, right, in Israel, right? And then the sea is to the right, and Safona, the forests are to the north, right? So that's sort of how they have the directions here. So that's why he renames him Benjamin, because they don't want to have him be constantly reminded of his mother's death and being, and grieving for it. So as we've talked about a few times, and as it's always important to mention, that names do matter. Names make a difference. What we call ourselves, what people call us, it does make a difference in terms of identity, perception, sense of self. And so Benjamin, obviously a name important to my family, that's my third, is Benjamin, is his formal name, and we call him Benji. So Benjamin is there now, the youngest. He's the youngest of the children. And Rachel passes away. You can still go, if one wants to take one's life into one's hands, to Rachel's grave. It's not actually Rachel's grave, I'm pretty sure. But that being said, there is something, like there is a site that you can go to, and you can visit Rachel's grave. And that's what you can get. The red strings are wound on the stone. So there's like little red string bracelets. And sometimes you see like mystical, folks have, amongst others, like the superstitious charms, but they're wound over Rachel's grave. At least like they say they are. They might be in, Shmuel's backyard, but they're gonna say they waved them over, the grave. It's like when I bought holy water. It's like, you don't know if it's actually holy water or not, but it's like $5, so why not? If a vampire comes into my house, I can get him. So it's very important to. I don't actually have it. I gave it as a gift, but I didn't think you could actually buy it. What did I know? But I was at a store and near Ein Gedi, and they had like little cups, little vials of holy water from the Jordan River. Again, it could have been from Shmuel's bathtub for all I know, but $5 is $5. It's fine. It's like getting the oil as well. It was blessed by Mr. Hooky Doo in the back. Fine, whatever. Take the money. It's fine. It's a gift. I'm not keeping it. So that was a little bit of a tangent. Okay, but yeah, so we have Rachel's grave there, and then Israel, as Karen noted, is sort of a split identity here. He's Jacob in one sentence, and he's Israel the next sentence. So he's journeying on. And by the way, as he was schlepping along, his older son thought it would be great to sleep with his what? Like, there's not really a term for it, right? I mean, Rachel and Leah have names, sort of in terms of roles. Like, I'm not sure what that would even be either, frankly. That what's Rachel to Reuben? Mommy too? Not really a stepmother, but that's neither here nor there. but Bilhah and Zilpah, the concubines that are there, that are basically, again, surrogate parents, or at least the ones who carried a lot of these kids to term, Reuben decides it would be a good idea to sleep with her. Once again, Jacob,
That's tacky.
less than amused. Plus, there's a little bit of an age difference, not for nothing. I mean, like the Bible's the Bible, and certainly it ain't the first time.
Would
And-
that be considered incest in
That's
some
what I
way?
was asking. It sounds like it's incest.
Well,
Well,
there,
and that's what they do his mother.
I mean, I'll put it this way. Bilhah has no legal status. I mean, she's a concubine, and she's not related to him by blood, but she's related to his brothers, like they're half brothers, right? Like sort of half siblings, same dad, different mom, right? And so, I mean, certainly, I'll put it this way, certainly in the Levitical sense, it ain't great. Again, concubine, no concubine, I'm trying to think of a polite way of saying this, but but like the father, and Bilhah, like that they were together, like they were intimate with each other. So for the son to be intimate with the same woman, I think I heard someone say sort of tacky, to put it mildly. I think it's a little bit not what one does normally.
Okay, what is a concubine? Do they have any kind of social status, or they're just,
No, this is what I'm saying.
be
Like,
used?
they don't really have much. Like if somehow the concubine was taken by someone out of the family, or hurt, or whatever it is, it might be some sense of, again, monetary fine. But I don't think we'd even get to like, eye for eye sort of, capital punishment kinds of deals, because again, they don't have the same kind of status. But again, it's a little unseemly to say the least, I would think, in this case. And again, Jacob not amused. Now, one has to remember that, like Jacob's there, obviously as the patriarch. We have these four women, 2 wives, 2 concubines. Reuben is the firstborn, like, look, a son, right? And Reuben, even though like Rachel might not have been his mother biologically, there might be some kind of grief. We don't always make the best decisions when we're emotionally fraught, when we're grieving, when we're stressed, when we're sad. And so one might say that Reuben might have been looking for something, during that time, that he was feeling particularly upset, downtrodden. Maybe Bilhah was there for him, and they have some kind of relationship. Is it something to write home about? Quite literally, no. It's not something I think that's going to look good for him. Maybe there's something there, right? That they just like they connect in that way. They're both suffering, they're both grieving. I'm a nice guy trying to cut Reuben a little slack, and maybe Bill has some slack too, for this moment.
But she is old enough to be his
don't look
mother.
good. What?
She's old enough to be his mother.
Yeah, quite literally. Yeah, she is definitely old enough to be his mother. But as I said, it's the Bible. It wouldn't be the first time there's an age discrepancy. Are you calling Bilhah a cougar? I don't know. I don't know. I
I don't know
can't
who
speak.
started this. I can't say.
I can't speak to it, but it's certainly, I'll put it this way, I don't think it's a really long-lasting relationship. I don't think you're gonna get like a Hanukkah card from Reuben and Bilhah. I think this sort of feels like a one-night kind of arrangement. And again, Israel found out, it's like sort of 3 words, it's a little ominous. It doesn't really say he found out and he was angry. But again, one can't really think that there was a lot of, attaboy, afterwards from this experience. I don't think Jacob was too keen on this moment.
So I have a question.
Yes.
Was there any kind of saving yourself for marriage? I don't, it doesn't sound like anybody's saving themselves for marriage. Maybe the
Well,
women.
there is no marriage. I think it's sort of the short answer in a way. Like there's really not that term. Like we have it a little bit, obviously, with the Jacob story, but in terms of like the formal conception of marriage, this was marriage. It's like it wasn't like the rabbis officiating here. Marriage, you take the woman into the tent, and then next morning you're married. Lots of stuff all around. Now you hope it's consensual, like that's sort of the goal, is consensual sex. That would be, the standard, so to speak, and which is why the rape, of Dinah, he's like, well, I already had sex with her, so I guess we should get married, and so that was not obviously the way it was going to work out for them, because that was non-consensual, but again, as I said, later on in the Bible, we're going to get these stories of like, if the rapist has like the first right of refusal to marry his victim, right? That's the society, because now the idea was, well, you had sex with her, you're married, because it was sort of one, unless you were a concubine, right? I think there was that idea of having a partner, so to speak, not to say that it was monogamous all the time, especially God knows on the man's side of things, but from the female perspective, yeah, no, I don't think they were supposed to be sleeping around, so to speak. And in fact, again, we're going to find out later that there is a penalty, and the penalty is actually death for a woman who sleeps around. And so, to this day, though obviously muted, but there were like 3 ways you get married in the old times. It was, sex, purchase, contract. Like those are the 3, right? So and we retained all of them. Even to this day, we've retained all of them, right? And so we have the contract, we have the ketubah, right? We have purchase. That's why we have rings, because we are acquiring, the bride. And egalitarian places, you both get a ring, right? But in Orthodox wedding, only the bride gets a ring during the ceremony. The groom gets a ring afterwards. And the ketubah, it's still in the Orthodox tradition, like I purchase you for X number of sheep. Like not literally sheep, of course, because it's 21st century, but that's there too. And what happens on the wedding night, right? Like there's a presumption, right? Certainly in the Orthodox tradition, that's when the marriage is consummated. So we have all those 3, combined, and now you're committed to each other, to be with each other physically. And so, there is that idea, but again, not with a concubine. Again, that's sort of the whole point. She's sort of, I'm trying to think of a better word than safe, but because she has no, status, he can sort of do what he wants with her. And there's no expectation that Reuben's going to marry Bilhah. Because that's not who she is. She's basically a sex slave. There's the nicer way of putting it is handmaiden, right? Like we sort of use these euphemisms, right? But in our parlance, like she's not really a handmaiden, unless it's actually like the Margaret Atwood handmaiden, maybe, but like that she's a handmaiden to the extent that she has a role, and that role is to be a uterus, and to give birth to kids, and to take care of said kids afterwards, to help out. So
that's question. Not what went on with Reuben.
No, in terms of with Bilhah, no. I mean, again, it was sort of again, the most generous interpretation you can have, or maybe two people feeling broken, comforting each other, I think is the best way, or the most generous way to look at it, to this scenario here. And again, one that perhaps better judgment would have prevented this escapade. But that's why it's always funny to me when you have these people going like, marriage is sacred, in the Bible, marriage is sacred, whatever it is. Yeah, it ain't there. It ain't there. I'm sorry, my friends. Read the Bible. Marriage and sacred, those words never even come together. I mean, because again, there's not much conception of marriage in the same way. So it ain't there. And when you have situations like these, in the Bible, marriage is not particularly sacred, so to speak.
So when
So-
did that change and who changed that? And how long down the road did that change where marriage is sacred?
Isn't that kind of a Christian precept or?
Yeah, that's what I was wondering.
I'm still trying to think of, no, I would say that it is a perspective that changes. I don't know when to date it, but certainly second, third, fourth century. I think by then there was an understanding that, there was a belief, at least, right, in some kind of marital sanctity, and that God somehow squeezed God's self into the marriage and wedding and the vows. There was something holy, right, about this, right? The Jewish wedding ceremony, part of it's called kiddushin, holiness, and so I wouldn't say it's a Christian phenomenon per se. I would say they use it perhaps a little more than we do, but I wouldn't say I wouldn't push it off just to them, because we use that too. In our wedding ceremonies and our wedding terminology, that marriage is holy and sacred. I think that the argument comes in is that who's declaring it sacred? I think we are in a way, but I'm just saying the Bible itself, I don't think sort of has much of a stance on the holiness of marriage. I think that's a later innovation. I don't think that's biblical in the same way.
Thank you.
No, it's a good question. I was thinking about love and marriage in the Bible, that as I've said before, the Bible doesn't really give us a lot about loving sacred relationship when it comes to how the families gather. Barbara, you want to give me this last little chunk here?
Yes. Now the sons of Jacob were 12 in number. The sons of Leah, Reuben, Jacob's firstborn, Simeon, Levi, Judah, Issachar, and Zebulun. The sons of Rachel, Joseph and Benjamin. The sons of Bilhah, Rachel's maid, Dan and Naphtali. And the sons of Zilpah, Leah's maid, Gad and Asher. These are the sons of Jacob who were born to him in Paddan Aram.
Yes, that's a little refresher of who belongs to who. And then Barbara, give me one more.
And Jacob came to his father Isaac at Mamre at Kiriath Arba, now Hebron, where Abraham and Isaac had sojourned. Isaac was 180 years old when he breathed his last and died. He was gathered to his kin in ripe old age, and he was buried by his sons, Esau and Jacob.
Okay, so we have that again. I think we had that before. And that's it. And by the way, who doesn't get mentioned in this?
Dinah.
Yeah, Dina.
Yeah, Dina once again does not get mentioned. We get all the sons, but we don't get the daughter. And so we start off with Dina, at least her narrative, her story, and don't get her at the end of the narrative. And so again, tricky. Obviously, it's a tricky, reading between that story and some of the other little fun spots in this week's Torah study experience. We have more to come next week. We didn't get to the second, most disturbing story in Genesis. It's not the first most disturbing story in Genesis. So we'll get that next week, Judah and Tamar. We get to have that fun next week and start the narrative of good old Joseph. We are winding down. Still got a lot of Genesis to go, but in terms of, we have Abraham's story, Isaac's story, and now we're sort of at the very end, the tail end of Jacob, and we're going to start with Joseph. So we're going to have the older, wiser, hopefully, Jacob, in this sort of phase of his life, and the young Joseph story. That little Dickens, he's going to get in some trouble next week. Spoiler alert. It's going to be a rough time for good old Joseph, but we're going to begin his journey as well. Okay, everybody. It was great seeing you.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. Good night, everybody.